Hello, I'm Gloria, a 36-year-old office worker navigating the complexities of daily life. My husband Matthew and I celebrated our 8th wedding anniversary recently, and we became parents almost immediately after our wedding. Our daughter, the light of our lives, is about to turn 8. Over the years, there have been moments of tension in our marriage, but the joy our daughter brings us is undeniable, and overall, I find great happiness in our family life. However, like in any family, there are areas of discontent, and for me, it revolves around financial management within our household. Matthew has a penchant for spending a significant portion of his earnings on his hobbies. While he doesn't go overboard, the amount he spends is not negligible. I have always emphasized the need for him to contribute a fixed minimum amount to our household expenses. This contribution helps us cover the essentials like utilities and groceries. Nonetheless, because Matthew contributes just the minimum, I find myself constantly looking for ways to reduce our spending elsewhere. My salary goes towards our rent, our daughter's school fees, and saving for her future educational costs. This financial juggling is a source of ongoing stress for me. Adding to the strain is the division of household labor. Despite both of us working full-time jobs, Matthew contributes very little to the household chores. I've repeatedly expressed my desire for a more equitable distribution of these duties. Balancing work, financial management, and home maintenance is challenging, and I often wish the responsibilities were more evenly shared. Despite these challenges, I maintain a positive outlook and work tirelessly to ensure our home is a nurturing environment for our daughter. I hope that as she grows, we can model the values of responsibility and teamwork, making adjustments along the way to better support one another in all aspects of our family life. This situation isn't perfect, but I'm committed to making the best of it and ensuring that our family thrives. Whenever I asked him to help around the house, he would claim it would take him too long to do the tasks, using this as an excuse to avoid them. Consequently, it became routine for me to handle everything by myself. We had our daughter shortly after getting married, but my husband hardly participated in her upbringing. He expressed fears of accidentally hurting her, which left me carrying most of the parental responsibilities. Over time, I grew increasingly dissatisfied with my husband. Despite this, we had been together for 8 years and had a growing child. I knew initiating a divorce at a time when our daughter was approaching puberty might not be wise. I told myself that perhaps it was normal for spouses to feel distant after years together, and that no family is perfect. However, a recent incident involving my sister-in-law made me seriously reconsider our marriage. One day, unexpectedly, she showed up at my doorstep looking distressed. "Gloria, I'm sorry, but I need to hide out here for a while," she said urgently. "I've had a bit of a problem with my husband. Can I stay here for a bit?" Curious and concerned, I asked her, "Did something happen with Ryan?" She evasively tried to change the topic, which left me unsatisfied and anxious for more information. I waited until my husband came home from work. It was about 9 p.m., and after we put our daughter to bed, my sister-in-law, my husband, and I finally sat down to talk. "So, what happened, sister?" I inquired. She replied, "Well, Ryan just snapped and angrily said he wants a divorce." This was shocking to me because I always thought of Ryan as a very stable and sincere person. I was taken aback when my sister-in-law mentioned that Ryan, her husband, had abruptly demanded a divorce. It didn't add up. Ryan wasn't the type to lose his temper without a valid reason. "Why did Ryan get so angry?" I asked her. "Why are you asking me that?" she retorted, her voice tinged with panic. It crossed my mind that perhaps she had done something to provoke him, considering his drastic decision to divorce. "Why are you defending Ryan? Are you involved with him or something?" she accused. Of course, I denied it. My husband chimed in, laughing off her accusation. "No, that's impossible. She barely has time for anything beyond her responsibilities," he defended me, noting how I always left my phone out in the open. Despite my husband's defense, I was frustrated. My life was a whirlwind of work, household chores, and caring for our kids. After long days, I barely had time to glance at my phone, let alone engage in an affair. Still puzzled, my sister-in-law insisted she didn't know why Ryan was upset. We decided it was best to speak directly with Ryan to clear the air. Later, Ryan came over to our house. My sister-in-law chose to step out, finding it too awkward to face him. Upon his arrival, Ryan was apologetic, expressing his regret for the upheaval he had caused. "I'm really sorry for causing so much trouble," he said earnestly, confirming my belief in his sensible nature. "I can't understand why you'd ask for a divorce so suddenly, Ryan. You've only been married a year. Isn't that quite severe? There must be a reason," I pressed him, hoping for some clarity on the sudden rift in their marriage. Ryan disclosed a significant issue that had shaken the foundation of their marriage. My sister-in-law had used up his entire savings of $110,000 without his consent. My husband and I were taken aback by the revelation. "You managed to save $110,000 and it's all gone in just 1 year? That averages about $5,500 every month," I said, astounded by the sheer amount. Further probing revealed that Ryan had been diligently managing their finances, allocating sufficient funds from his monthly income to cover all living and necessary expenses. This meant that the $110,000 was spent entirely on non-essential personal entertainment by my sister-in-law. It's only natural for Ryan to be upset. Anyone would be in his shoes, I know I would be. I sympathized, recognizing the difficulty in maintaining a relationship with someone who has such a reckless spending habit. A sense of discomfort lingered in the air, perhaps because my husband, too, shared a tendency to overspend, much like his sister. It felt like familial traits were at play here. Given the circumstances, I suggested to Ryan, if she doesn't make an effort to repay the $110,000, you might want to think about separating, especially since there are no children to consider. Nodding in agreement with my advice, my husband unexpectedly chimed in, "I'll ensure my sister pays you back." His sudden confidence left me puzzled. How could he be so sure? Ryan thanked him, appreciating the support. "I'd appreciate that, thank you." It seemed we had reached a tentative resolution, and I decided to monitor how the situation would evolve from there. After Ryan departed, my sister-in-law made her way back to our house. I confronted her immediately. "Ryan mentioned you used up all of his savings, $110,000. Defensively, she responded, "I used it for living expenses." I tried to explain this to him, but he just wouldn't understand. However, Ryan had previously clarified that he maintained a separate account specifically for everyday expenses. Her reply was sharp and dismissive. "You don't know anything, so just shut up." Her harsh tone was not out of character. She often resorted to belittling me in our conversations. Given her lack of remorse and her dismissive attitude towards the financial chaos she'd caused, it was increasingly apparent that Ryan might indeed be better off seeking a divorce. Her inability to acknowledge the gravity of the situation or express any intent to amend her mistakes painted a bleak picture of the future of their marriage. During the heated discussion, Ryan mentioned that he could consider forgiving my sister-in-law if she repaid the $110,000 she had spent. "How can I pay back that much? I'm just a housewife," she lamented, seemingly cornered by her actions. I retorted somewhat sternly, "If you can't manage to pay it back, you shouldn't be spending his money in the first place." Amidst the tension, my sister-in-law turned to me with a hopeful sparkle in her eye. "Relax, Gloria. We've got money, right? You've got $220,000 saved up, so no worries, right?" she exclaimed as if she had found a miraculous solution. "What? Wait a minute, how do you even know about my savings, Matthew?" I asked, completely thrown off. I had never disclosed to my husband that I had saved that amount for our daughter's future tuition. "I found it when I went to your parents' house. It was in the second drawer of the closet in your room," he admitted nonchalantly. "You went through my things without asking? That's unbelievable. We're married, but that doesn't automatically make my personal belongings open for inspection," I protested, feeling betrayed by the breach of privacy. Ignoring my concerns, Matthew pressed on, "Your sister-in-law is in trouble. Give us your savings to help her out." I was incredulous. "I'm not handing over the money. That's for our daughter's future. If you think $110,000 should just be handed over, then why don't you find a way to pay her?" I challenged. Dramatic turn, Matthew pulled out divorce papers from a drawer, as if he had been contemplating this option all along. During the confrontation, Matthew casually mentioned he had prepared divorce papers just in case. "I had them ready in case something happened. You've got some nerve trying to manipulate the situation like this," he said with a cold edge to his voice. "That's exactly what I've been wanting to say to you," I shot back, equally frustrated with the audacity of his actions. Then, with an air of finality, Matthew filled out the form and stated flatly, "I'm serious. We can get a divorce anytime you want." My sister-in-law, watching the drama unfold with a mischievous grin, eagerly offered her support to Matthew. "Well, I'll be one of your witnesses," she declared and scribbled her name on the form. "You can either pay me the $110,000 or we can get a divorce," Matthew threatened, thinking he could back me into a corner. I was astounded by their boldness and underhanded tactics. Deciding not to let them see how deeply they were affecting me, I feigned compliance, letting the moment pass without further confrontation. The next day, I took matters into my own hands and invited some important figures, my in-laws and Ryan, to our home. When they arrived, Matthew was bewildered. "Ryan, why are you here? Mom, Dad, what's going on?" Before Matthew could continue, his father intervened. "Matthew, don't embarrass yourself further." Turning to me, his mother apologized. "Gloria, I'm sorry about my sons and daughters' foolish behavior." Ryan also chimed in. "I must apologize to you too, Gloria." Their apologies were a balm, but the situation quickly escalated again when Matthew tried to assert himself. "Why are you two apologizing? You should be quiet." Ignoring him, his father continued. "We went through your room, Matthew, and found stacks of expensive bags and jewelry." His mother explained further. "Ryan asked us to look into it, and it's clear you've had a habit of hiding expensive purchases from us since you were young." The revelations were damning. Facing the mounting evidence of his deceit, Matthew's mother concluded, "I can't stay married to you anymore." The tide had turned dramatically, revealing the true extent of Matthew's financial indiscretions and casting my earlier grievances in a starkly different light. After it came out that my sister-in-law had falsely claimed she used the $110,000 for living expenses, the situation escalated. "I want you to pay me back the $110,000 and then we can get a divorce," Ryan demanded firmly. To everyone's shock, especially Matthew's, I had already taken significant steps. "Oh no, Matthew, you're getting a divorce too. Gloria already filled out the divorce papers and I signed as a witness. We just submitted them together," my sister-in-law declared defiantly. "What? I won't allow that," Matthew exclaimed, outraged. "You won't allow it? What are you talking about? You were the one threatening divorce and trying to make her, who has nothing to do with your sister's debts, take responsibility. You are despicable," I retorted. "Gloria is my wife, not your property. She wasn't born into your family. She is essentially a stranger to whom you should show more respect and care," Ryan interjected, supporting me in front of everyone. Faced with such a straightforward and legitimate argument from my parents-in-law, Matthew was left speechless and could only hang his head in shame. My sister-in-law was also visibly shaken by the turn of events and stood by silently, overwhelmed. Thankfully, my parents-in-law facilitated the conversation smoothly, helping both Ryan and me navigate through the divorce without further complications. In an attempt to make amends, my sister-in-law managed to sell as many luxury goods as she could, gathering about $45,000 to repay Ryan. The remaining $30,000 was handled by my parents-in-law, under whose strict supervision my sister-in-law would have to repay the debt. This arrangement helped restore some balance and ensured that she was held accountable for her actions, while also supporting Ryan and me in starting fresh chapters in our lives. After the divorce, my sister-in-law found herself in a tough spot financially. She now works tirelessly from morning until night, striving to repay the substantial debt she accumulated from mismanaging her former husband's savings. Her days are long and filled with the kind of hard work that leaves little room for rest. As for my ex-husband, the divorce necessitated some adjustments on his part as well. I arranged for him to provide child support, which he has been managing to pay consistently despite his circumstances. However, I've heard through the grapevine that he continues to live alone in his apartment. His salary, though decent, is stretched thin by his rent, living expenses, and child support payments. The financial strain eventually forced him to move to a more affordable apartment. Unfortunately, his long-standing habit of unnecessary spending hasn't helped his situation. Despite living in a cheaper place, he often finds himself broke and without any savings. His financial behavior not only keeps him on a tight budget, but also suggests that he might find it challenging to enter into another relationship anytime soon, given his unstable financial footing. Meanwhile, I've returned to my parents' home with my daughter. Being back home has allowed me to stabilize our lives and focus on the future. My parents have been incredibly supportive, helping with childcare while I work. This support system has been crucial in allowing me to regain my footing after the divorce. I'm working diligently, not just to meet our day-to-day needs, but also to save for my daughter's future. I want her to have every opportunity to pursue her dreams and ambitions without financial constraints. It's a new chapter for us, and I'm determined to make it a successful one. I'm also planning to continue sharing our journey, hoping our story can inspire or help others in similar situations. If you find our story engaging and are interested in seeing how we navigate this new phase of our lives, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot, and I look forward to connecting with you in future videos. Thank you for watching.
Entering the living room, I was met with a pile of cardboard boxes. "What's going on here?" I asked, confused. From behind the boxes, my mother-in-law emerged with a smirk of triumph. "You're back. Maxwell told me you don't want me to have a key, but you can't just shut me out like this," she snapped. I froze, realizing the depth of the betrayal. "I'm moving in. This apartment in the high-rise is mine now," she blurted out. Her words made my head spin, and for a moment, my world seemed to collapse. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. My name is Doris. I turned 35 this year. I've been married to my husband Maxwell for 6 years. We were a working couple with different jobs. Maxwell, who used to work for a securities company, quit 2 years ago, and is now a day trader at home. I was working at a jewelry shop, fulfilling a dream I had since childhood. One day, before heading to work, I spoke to Maxwell, who was leisurely drinking coffee. "Maxwell, I'm going to work. Can you do the laundry?" "Huh? I'm busy," Maxwell replied with a bothered expression, which annoyed me. "I'm doing all the other housework, so it's okay for you to do that much," I argued. "You think I'm taking it easy because I work from home? I'm not going to do it," he snapped. Just as I was about to retort, the living room door opened. "Hey, Doris," said my mother-in-law Rose, suddenly appearing. "I've been listening for a while now, but what do you mean by trying to get Maxwell to do housework?" I stared at her in shock. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" "Oh, by the way," Maxwell said casually, "I gave my mom the key to this apartment." "What? Why would you do such a thing on your own?" I protested, but my mother-in-law interrupted with a glare. "Do you have a problem with that?" Rose continued. "Besides, it's strange for a wife to make her husband do housework. Doris, you should be doing it properly." "That's right, Mom. Tell her more," Maxwell chimed in with a grin. "You're not even earning much, but you're a cheeky wife." Feeling attacked, I bit my lip. "I understand. I'll do it when I get back, so please leave it." "That's right," my mother-in-law said triumphantly. "A wife should be obedient to her husband." I avoided meeting her smug expression and walked out of the house. My mother-in-law, however, was the real challenge for me. Ever since she was widowed, she had been living alone nearby. She seemed proud of Maxwell, who graduated from a top university, and adored him excessively. Rose didn't like me from the beginning, and constantly made sarcastic remarks. My husband never sided with me when she attacked me, and I soon realized he was a mama's boy with high pride and a tendency to show off. After that, my mother-in-law started visiting frequently, criticizing my housework and clinging to her son all day. This life exhausted me. One day, on her birthday, I reluctantly went to her house alone, as Maxwell had an errand. "Happy birthday," I said as I handed her a beautifully wrapped gift. "It's a new product from our brand." Before I could finish, she let out a loud click of her tongue. "What is this? You're trying to get it cheap. You probably bought it with an employee discount, didn't you?" Rose scoffed, her tone dripping with sarcasm and disdain. "That's not true." I hurriedly denied it, but she wouldn't listen. "I don't need such a cheap thing that doesn't even fill my stomach." "You're not thoughtful at all," my mother-in-law said dismissively. Even though I had prepared it hoping to please her, she started nagging with a glare. "You're noisy. I don't like that you're working at a jewelry shop. It's too flashy," she added, her voice sharp with irritation and disapproval. "That's too much," I snapped back. "I'm proud of my work." "A mere saleswoman proud? That's laughable. You're being fed by Maxwell. Return this useless thing and bring me a gift certificate," Rose demanded. I packed the present back into my bag, left her house, and headed to the department store. "I'd like $200 worth of gift certificates, please," I said, my heart heavy. I bought gift certificates at the department store, had them wrapped as a present, and returned to my mother-in-law's house with heavy steps. "I'm back," I called out. My husband, who had arrived at some point, popped his head out. "Doris, today is Mom's celebration. I've ordered some fancy catering," he announced enthusiastically, clearly proud of his contribution to the event. The dining table was filled with catering from a famous restaurant. "What? I bought ingredients to cook," I exclaimed, standing there dumbfounded. My mother-in-law interjected from the side. "What are you talking about? It's obvious that this is better than your cooking." "Maxwell, thank you," she added. All I could do was look at the two of them with a dissatisfied expression. After that, I reluctantly sat down with them at the table, and we began to eat. Maxwell and my mother-in-law were chatting happily, but I couldn't bring myself to join the conversation. When the mealtime was nearing its end, Maxwell suddenly brought it up. "Hey, Doris, isn't it about time we moved?" he asked. "What? Move?" I asked, confused. "You know, a new high-rise apartment was built nearby, right? I think it would be a motivation boost if I could work in a place with a good view like that," my husband continued. "Oh, that sounds nice," Rose chimed in with a dreamy expression. I hurriedly said, "Isn't our current apartment good enough?" However, Maxwell clearly looked unhappy at my words. "We have plenty of money to spare, so it's fine," he replied. My mother-in-law also glared at me and said in an intimidating manner, "That's right. Don't go against your husband." I was completely taken aback, and all I could say was, "I understand. Surely if moving makes my husband's work go smoother, it's not a bad thing. Not giving my mother-in-law a key when we move might actually make things better than they are now." I convinced myself of this and agreed to move to the high-rise apartment. While proceeding with the procedures, I said, "Maxwell, I want you to promise me something. Can you not give your mother the key when we move?" "Huh? Why?" he asked, puzzled. "Because I can't deal with your mother's constant meddling. If you can't promise that, then I can't go through with the move," I said firmly. Maxwell seemed to think for a moment and put his hand on my shoulder. "All right, if that's what you want, I get it. I won't give her the key," he reassured me. "Thank you, I'm glad you understand," I replied. My husband seemed to be looking forward to the high-rise apartment quite a bit, and with the promise not to give the key to my mother-in-law, I was able to prepare for the move with peace of mind. A few months later, we finally moved to the high-rise apartment. The location was great, the view was excellent, and the interior was luxurious. For a while, Maxwell and I lived in the high-rise apartment alone, and we finally had peaceful and happy days. A few weeks later, I had a business trip and had to leave the house for a night. On the day of the business trip, Maxwell sent me off with a smile. I hopped on the train, headed to my destination, and kept busy with one task after another. I managed to finish my work, bought souvenirs, and returned home. When I opened the door, I noticed a bear ornament that hadn't been there before. It was the same one from my mother-in-law's house. I had a bad feeling and went to the living room, where there were stacks of cardboard boxes. "Oh, what's this?" I exclaimed. Then my mother-in-law, grinning from the back of the cardboard, appeared. "You're finally back. I heard you told Maxwell not to give me the key. You can't shut me out like that," she retorted. I panicked and confronted her. "What on earth is this luggage?" "What do you mean?" "I'm going to live here. My son's high-rise apartment is mine," Rose concluded. "What about the house you were living in?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "That place was rented, so I've already canceled it," my mother-in-law replied proudly. Her words made my head spin. Just then, Maxwell walked into the living room after my mother-in-law. "Oh, Doris, you're back," he said nonchalantly, as if everything was perfectly normal. "Maxwell, what is this? I didn't hear about this," I said, my voice rising. "It's fine. We have extra rooms," he replied dismissively. "I can't live together," I continued desperately, appealing to him, but he looked at me coldly. "If you have a complaint, you should leave," he replied. "That's right," my mother-in-law added. "Maxwell and I are going to live here, so the nuisance should leave quickly." I couldn't believe they would ambush me like this after all their previous behavior. To top it off, they were telling me to leave. I gritted my teeth in frustration, but spoke calmly. "I understand. I will leave this house," I said. "If you understand, pack your things quickly and leave. It will be interesting to see how you live from now on," my mother-in-law concluded, laughing. I packed my things while listening to her laughter. My husband avoided looking at me, but I clearly told him, "Maxwell, are you sure about this?" "You'll probably come back soon. Cool your head," he smirked. I left the high-rise apartment under their watchful eyes. A month later, I was relaxing in my newly rented apartment when the doorbell rang loudly. "Who is it?" I asked. "Hey, you!" "Open this place right now," came the angry voice. On the doorbell screen, I saw my mother-in-law, her face red, with my husband behind her. I decided to let them in to avoid disturbing the neighbors. "What can I do for you?" I asked with a troubled face. My mother-in-law snapped, "What do you mean we have to leave that high-rise apartment? That place has already been sold." "Sold?" I asked. "There's no way you could sell something that belongs to Maxwell," she said, glaring. "Something that belongs to Maxwell?" I glanced at Rose, confused, then added firmly, "That high-rise apartment is mine. I bought it." My mother-in-law turned to look at my husband, who stood pale and silent. "What is that?" "What do you mean?" she asked him, her voice trembling. I sighed deeply and looked straight at my husband. "Maxwell, didn't you tell her?" I asked. My husband remained silent, avoiding my gaze. I turned to my still confused mother-in-law. "You said it was a flashy jewelry shop, but our shop is a famous high-end jewelry brand. I am also the jewelry designer and manager of that brand," I said firmly. "Huh? Manager?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, her mouth wide open as she looked at me. "That's why I have some savings. By the way, the gift you said she didn't need because it was cheap is actually worth more than $10,000. I continued calmly. $10,000? My mother-in-law repeated in shock. "I returned it just like you told me to. By the way, the catering for your birthday was also paid for by Maxwell using my card," I added, glaring at my husband. "Huh?" My mother-in-law turned to her son and asked, "Maxwell, why don't you just buy back the high-rise apartment from this woman? You're a skilled day trader, aren't you?" My husband said nothing. Holding back a laugh, I turned to my mother-in-law. "Maxwell doesn't have any savings." "What?" my mother-in-law said, her face showing disbelief. My husband still stood silently. I calmly explained, "He's been losing a lot of money due to failed trades. He should have almost no savings left from his company employee days. Isn't that right, Maxwell?" "That," my husband stammered. "Maxwell, that's not true, is it?" my mother-in-law asked as she grabbed my husband's arm and shook him. My husband sat down on the spot, as if his knees had given out. "I thought if I moved to the high-rise apartment and got motivated, I would succeed in my work. But," he tried to justify himself. "But," I pressed, giving him a sharp glare. He continued in a muffled voice, "I failed again. I'm not sure if I can even afford to live with my mom, let alone buy back the high-rise apartment," my husband concluded. "Well, what?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, panicking. I didn't respond to her, instead crossing my arms as I turned to Maxwell. "So, you've been reckless with money, haven't you?" I said coldly. "I tried to support you because I thought that's what couples do, but clearly you had no plan." Doris, I'm really sorry, Maxwell pleaded, dropping to his knees in desperation. Please, give me a chance to start over. Maxwell, what are you saying to this woman? My mother-in-law interrupted, trying to get him to stand. But my husband shouted at her, But Mom, if we don't do this, we won't be able to live. I turned to my husband, who kept apologizing to me, and spoke in a soft tone. Maxwell, lift your head. When he lifted his head, his eyes were full of expectation. I continued gently. You've always been told to get another job to support the household, but you never did. You never thanked me, and you never helped with the housework. I'm sorry, my husband muttered, his face pale. I ignored his apology. You took me for granted and told me to leave, and now this? It's too convenient for you, isn't it? That is, he stammered, but I cut him off. I'm divorcing you. I want nothing to do with you anymore, I said coldly. Doris, my husband pleaded. When I snapped at him, my husband tried to cling to me again, but I silently shook off his hand. My mother-in-law, who had been watching the whole thing, let out a mournful cry. Wait a minute, what will happen to the high-rise apartment? She asked hysterically. That's clearly out of the question, I replied, my patience wearing thin. My mother-in-law shrieked, So what are we supposed to do now? Why don't you live happily with your beloved son? I replied sarcastically. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to be in a daze. My husband, who had been hanging his head, stood up and I kicked him out. For a while, I could hear my mother-in-law making a fuss at the front door, but it seemed to quiet down when people came. After that, my husband and mother-in-law, who had been kicked out of the high-rise apartment, seemed to have rolled into a shabby apartment that looked like it was about to collapse. My husband had to work day and night to repay the debt he had made from stock trading, and my mother-in-law, who had never worked before, seemed to have to go to a factory part-time. I hope they understand a little bit about the difficulty of earning money while working hard, but it's none of my business anymore. As for me, the jewelry brand is doing well, and we have decided to open a store overseas. I bought a beautiful apartment for singles with the money from selling the high-rise apartment, and I am living a leisurely life. From now on, I want to live my life positively while cherishing my work.